And we're back. It's been so long, guys. It feels like it's been only like 2 or 3 weeks, but I have just missed you so much and have wanted to provide some content for you guys and wanted to bring on somebody who knew what she was talking about. But before we do that, I want to let you know that the Bearded Tog long-term mentorship program is officially open for registration. You can go to the link in the show notes, or you can go to adammason.com/education, and you can find out more about long-term mentorship. It is a full year of personalized coaching and training with me and the 9 other, there are only 10 slots, so there's 9 other people other than you and myself in this program for a year to help you get traction and clarity in your business. We are going to do all kinds of stuff. There are 10 modules of education. So 1, business and personal goals, SEO contents and audits. We're going to do branding. We're going to shoot together. You're going to get a free pass to the Bearded Talk workshops or any workshops that we do. It is going to be awesome. And we're going to meet once a month, me and you personally, just us two. And we're going to talk about anything you need to talk about. We're going to have an open community group where everybody can go in our small little knit community and just vent or talk about things or get advice or get different perspectives. And it's really going to be my personal goal to make sure that you guys are successful in 2019 and 2020, and that you just have a good base foundation in these core areas of business that I think you should know about. And I'm really, 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 really excited. Obviously, we've been talking about it forever, and it is finally, registration is finally open. If you want more information, go to the link in the show notes or adammason.com/education. But today we are talking to the one and only, the beautiful and magical and amazing Dannie Lynn Fountain. She is awesome. I found her through our good buddy Tyler McCall, who we had on the podcast a while back, and it was supposed to be about his Instagram strategy, but we really talked about him, his father's passing away and how he was kind of dealing with that as a business, because it's a real thing. And so that was just kind of the timing of that. So, but I did meet Dannie through Tyler, and so Dannie is a business strategist for creative entrepreneurs. And so she has over 100 clients between her full-time job and her doing this, which is also full-time. She spoke at 60 or something events last year, which is insane. She lived a whole year as a nomad, essentially just traveling and flying. And she's just bold and adventurous, and I love her. And it was so good to talk to her in this episode. So without any further ado, here's Dannie Lynn Fountain. Dannie, how's it going?
I am so good. How are you?
Good. It feels good to be back. We've taken a few weeks off, and you're our first guest back after like a few weeks. And I don't know, it's very exciting to have you. I'm like, oh man, we gotta get real. We've got the real Dannie in here, so it's kind of intimidating. I was like, oh, not that any of our guests are like lesser or more, but I don't know. We're in the big leagues now. Like I have to make sure that I'm on since you're on. Like we gotta be good.
Oh my gosh. Stop.
That's awesome. Man. So we're going to talk about like who you were, if you will, but what do you do? Like I follow you on Instagram all the time, and it just seems like you do all kinds of things. Like I like, there's both like Instagram marketing, Google, other business ventures for creatives, and then you're like living everywhere. And I know we kind of wanted to chat about like marketing for people, but like tell me what you do, and take as long as you need.
Well, it's so funny because I feel like everyone uses Instagram differently. And my Instagram is kind of like LiveJournal 2.0. So you're just getting like
yes,
my very real journalistic thoughts. So my Instagram covers everything from personal to professional. But during the day, I work at Google. And that is my 9 to 5 with an asterisk. It's
what in the world?
Really 9 to 5.
So what is that? Like what, you work at Google but you're in Detroit. So you're working remotely?
No. So Google has 70 offices all over the country. We have 3, or all over the globe, really. We have 3 offices in Michigan, 1 in Ann Arbor, 1 in Detroit, and 1 in Farmington Hills.
What?
Yep. So I think one Michigan altogether employs like 1,000 people.
That's incredible.
So yeah, I'm like at an actual Google office, sitting in a Google conference room while I talk to you.
Sorry, Google, for stealing Danny's time, but we do use your services, and yeah. So what is that like? Before we dive in, like, you work for Google. What do you do for them, if you can say?
Yeah, so I work in marketing. Essentially, I work with the very best group of advertisers. They are on Google Ads, obviously, promoting their business. And my job is to comb through their Google Ads account and find ways to optimize their performance without necessarily like increasing their budget. Honestly, a lot of them have cost per acquisition goals and customer lifetime value goals. And it's just finding ways to drive towards those targets. So it's a lot more technical of a job than I ever thought I would have. But it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I mean, that's what all of us want. Like, you know, we want to try and keep our costs down, but at the same time, like, the goals are the same. Like, I think of it as like using Instagram or Facebook marketing without ads is like guerrilla marketing. I think it's like, hey, you can do anything you want. You can put all the effort in for free that you want, and try. And like, that's really cool. But at the same time, for those businesses, if they want to or need to spend or have the budget, like, they can do that too.
Exactly.
That is awesome. So give me the background on you. Like, how did you get into marketing? How did you get to Google? And like, I know, at least from your Instagram, I found you through Tyler McCall, who's like a former guest. And he visited you, I think, like a year or two ago. And so I was like, oh, this woman is awesome. We got to have her on. Give me a little bit of your background and how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah. Oh gosh. It always starts with a boy, Adam. It always starts with a boy.
That is not what I expected to hear at all. That's amazing.
I was dating the son of a politician my freshman year of high school. And at the time, I was dead set on becoming a corporate lawyer. I wanted to do mergers and acquisitions for the rest of my life. Like, I think the first time I said I wanted to be a corporate lawyer, I was 3 years old. My grandma has it on video.
Wow.
And freshman year of college, I'm dating this boy. His dad is running for re-election, and his dad is like, well, why don't you come work for me? Like, we need to do some youth voter marketing. We need to get those millennials out to vote. And I was like, I'm 14 years old, but I mean, sure. So I started freelancing for his dad over the summer before my freshman year. And he ended up getting elected. Probably has nothing to do with what I did, but he got elected.
Hey, for those who don't know, though, like, living in DC, I found this out, and I've only been on one campaign. If you're on a winning team, you're hired for life. Like, if you're on a winning team.
100%. Yeah. And that's literally what happened. Though they weren't political clients, he started referring me to constituents that had businesses. So I found myself doing marketing for an asphalt company, for a chocolatier, still 14 years old. And I'm just helping out with all this marketing. And I was like, whatever, this is cool. Like, it'll pay the bills. It'll give me some spending money, but I'm still going to be a lawyer. So I graduate high school and I go to undergrad, declare pre-law. And first year of undergrad, second year of undergrad, dead set on this whole pre-law thing. I did a fellowship in like political science and policy. And all along I've been minoring in business. And then senior year rolls around.
Right.
And I do an internship in marketing. I needed an internship that I could do without taking a semester off classes. And this chemical mold release company needed a marketing associate. Now, if you don't know, chemical mold release is like the Pam of the industrial world. It literally just is the spray that releases stuff from steel molds. And so my job was to sell this stuff that I didn't even understand. And I fell in love with it. Like, I fell in love with trade shows and marketing. And we came up with a whole like social media marketing strategy for this very essentially like toilet paper-esque product, right? Like everybody needs it.
Yeah.
And so senior year, I switched my major and I flip. So now I'm majoring in business and minoring in law. And it's like, shoot, I got to finish all of these classes so that I can flip this major and minor. And I graduated. And all this time I've been side hustling. So 4 years of high school, 3 years of undergrad. I've been side hustling this whole time. Graduate undergrad, and I get a job at Whirlpool, the appliance company.
Yeah.
Again, I'm really good at getting jobs in sexy industries.
Yeah.
Asphalt, mold release, appliances. And so I'm helping sell washers and dryers to Home Depot and Lowe's. It's super great. And then I quit my job and went full-time with my business. And then Google found me.
Wow. That is so crazy. We talk to a lot of people on here that have like different stories, and like some make more sense. So like I originally went to college to play guitar, like as a musician, and now I'm a photographer, and you're like, okay, cool. Like those are kind of like they make sense, but like selling the PAM of the chemical industry or of like the steel industry to remove stuff from steel molds, and after going to pre-law or like, that, and then you're side hustling and now you're at Google. That is like, you always see, that those memes on Instagram where it's like here's your plan for your life, and it's like a linear projection, and then here's the other line, and it's like this crazy zigzag. Yeah. That is you. That was made after your life.
100%. 100%.
But in a good way. That's awesome. And I mean, like I'm sure that comes up now working for Google, like in the advertising and marketing space of like, how to help all kinds of clients.
And it's so funny too. So we don't get to pick the advertisers that we work with.
Sure.
There's this whole magical formula that decides who gets who, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
My book is like 80% industrial, 20% technical.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so I'm able to come in with all of this like chemical and industrial manufacturing knowledge that I have. I say all of this with literally 2 years of experience.
Yeah.
But I'm able to have these conversations with these guys, and they're like, you're a 24-year-old female. How do you understand this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, because of this really weird internship, like it worked out.
That is awesome. I love that. And so are you still side hustling? Like I know you still have your site.
Gosh, yeah.
So tell me more about that. I mostly knew you from kind of the Instagram marketing side of things, but you do a lot of marketing for entrepreneurs of like all kinds of sizes, or tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I'm pretty dead split between like folks in our space and then corporate clients. So if you know anything about corporate America, nobody in-house wants to take responsibility for big pivot decisions.
Yeah.
They hire contractors because if it doesn't go well, you just fire the contractor and nobody at the company loses their job. Like it's great. So I kind of play that role in corporations. I come in, shake things up. I'm the girl with the tattoos and the pierced nose, and we have real conversations about how archaic their marketing is. It's a lot of fun. And then I also work with creative entrepreneurs and like how to integrate the different pieces of their business or how to expand into something new, all from a marketing perspective.
That is awesome. That's awesome. And so how does Instagram play a part in that? And like, what is one thing you see a lot of, small businesses and entrepreneurs doing wrong on Instagram or marketing in general?
So it's funny because I feel like Tyler has the PhD in Instagram, and I'm just over here soaking up his knowledge because I do things what he would call the wrong way.
Totally.
Like I don't pre-schedule my Instagram. My captions get written 2 minutes before the image goes up. But I also have the luxury of doing that, having a black and white feed.
Right. Yeah. That's the one thing. Your whole feed is black and white. And so like, there's all kinds of Instagram theories and ideas of like, hey, you should do. And as a photographer, I'm ashamed to say that my feed is not that pretty, or it's not cohesive, if you will. But like people say like, oh, one light and one dark. And like, I always make sure there's a photo of you in the top 9 and like all these little kind of tricks. It's kind of like fishing. Like, hey, you should use this lure and you should use this bobber. And, so well, we can totally oust Tyler and, go to the different side. Is that something, have you seen Instagram work for you? And then have you kind of been able to coach other businesses in kind of their way? Or do you lean more of like the scheduled, planned out kind of sense for your clients?
So when I'm teaching, Instagram fits into the larger scheme of things as like this entire integrated like online, offline performance marketing package. They all work together. And so in that case, I'm encouraging clients to pre-schedule, which is funny, like do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah.
But that works for a lot of my clients' businesses. In my case, you can't pre-schedule authenticity. So mine tends to be more live time because my brand is kind of built on this idea that you're getting the real me all the time, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But there's a time and place for both. But I think to do the authentic and do it well, like you have to understand what you're doing. And I definitely, so like, I'll be frank, my Instagram has grown a lot slower. There were people that I was friends with 3 years ago when I first came into the creative space who had Instagrams half the size of mine then that now have Instagrams triple the size of mine now.
Sure.
Because there's this pre-scheduled, curated, beautiful, and that's kind of the culture of Instagram. So if your goal is this like growth with a little bit of velocity behind it, you're going to try and sell off of Instagram. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Like schedule, be consistent. But Instagram is my journal. And so if I grow a couple thousand a year, that's cool with me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And are you, it doesn't seem like it's your goal to get business or leads like strictly from Instagram. It's more.
No, I don't. 100%. Like I maybe get one a year and I work with 100 plus businesses a year.
Right. Like it's an outpouring of you rather than like a tool to try and bring people in.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
that makes sense. And if you wanted to try and book some leads off of Instagram, I'm sure that you would know how to change things up.
Yeah, I would just flip my strategy, become a lot more like intentional and consistent about it.
Right. Totally. Do you know, like, so when you're coaching other businesses, oftentimes, even for myself, it feels like you make this content and you're super proud of it. And, you know, and then you like let it out into the world. You like make a post and you do the proper hashtags and you maybe you are really authentic. Like that's something I've been working on the past year. And sometimes it just feels like you're not throwing money into the wind, but you're like throwing this content into the wind and nothing has returned. Like you're like throwing this boomerang, what you think of as a boomerang, and it never comes back. And like how can I and how can other businesses like dive into Instagram and either be encouraged that that's not exactly what we're doing and that it will come back, or like how can we really like hone in on a return from Instagram?
Well, you have to think about it like a conversation. If you think of the best conversations you've ever had, you've probably talked more than half the time. Like if you were to sit down and analyze that conversation, why was it such a good conversation? It's probably because you got to talk a lot. We as humans innately love talking. And so if you're posting 70% of the time and engaging with other people 30% of the time, Instagram is going to kind of feel like a void. You really should be engaging more than you're posting. And I feel like this is something Tyler teaches. So Tyler, bro, love you. Sorry.
It's okay to have overlap. It's okay.
Yeah, you really should be engaging more than you're posting or talking, because then the other people are going to feel the way that you felt in those best conversations you've ever had. They're talking more than you are, and they're going to fall in love with you.
Is that, people talk about engagement, but give us like a basic rundown. Like, does that just mean like commenting, or like what would be a basic strategy that you would say, hey, like you should try and do this?
So I really keep it simple. I don't like have a formula to figure out what my engagement should be, blah, blah, blah. I just have a rule. When I post something on Instagram, I stay on Instagram for a half an hour after that post. If people are commenting on my post, I'm replying to their comments. If people aren't commenting on my post, I'm checking out the different hashtags that I follow and engaging with other people. So I spend 30 minutes and whatever happens, happens. And I'll notice that the days that I'm commenting on other people's posts end up driving more net engagement than the days where I'm just replying to comments on my post.
Totally. Yeah. Because it's like people, you know, are, if they don't already follow you or they're not necessarily connected to you yet, at least in the app, it's like they're going to be like, oh, who's this Dannie person? And like, you know, hopefully they'll come back and see your latest post or something like that. I think too, there's a culture where this is terrible, back in the chat room days, and you would say like for like, or like pick for pick or something like that when you're like meeting a new friend. And I'm sure there's like terrible instances of that as well. But like in Instagram, it feels sometimes if I comment on a stranger's post, like they will come back and comment on one post, and they're kind of like trading without you ever speaking of anything like that. And, you know, I believe that hopefully that helps or something. One little trick I've been doing that was after talking to Tyler was this episode is just us talking about Tyler. This is basically it.
An homage to Tyler.
That's right. But it's all right. I'm all about connections, and he connected me to you. And so now we're pulling on. Like, we're just going to keep pulling the thread. And then you'll connect me to somebody else that has amazing things to say, and we're just going to keep learning. But oftentimes, you know, for me, something I would do is like I'd go to a location where I'd recently shot at. So like if I did post, and that's a big thing for wedding photographers is like the venue, because that's where everything happens. And so like I will go into the location tag, and I'll just comment on like basically every photo in the top 9 or top 12 or whatever they do, and then even more which is not crazy, but the one thing I do that I feel it has been really, really good has been asking a question, like having an open-handed question. Like even somebody, so I shoot at this winery all the time. Man, this is hilarious. People are going to think I'm insane. And so there's people not married, not having, you know, they also have a restaurant and they're trying wine. And I'll say, how was your meal? Or how was the wine? Or what did you think of the rosé? Which is funny because like I don't even drink, so I don't even care necessarily what they think of the actual drink. But I'm trying to get their attention in an authentic way. But at the same time, you know, like it's not like I wouldn't say that like asking them how they felt about something was empathy, but I'm trying to relate, and it has helped a lot. Like there's a few, we'll talk offline. There's a few strategies where I have picked, you know, we've like defined our ideal client or like ideal avatar, if you will, and she works out at a certain place. And at least for one of mine, and so I'll comment on all the photos from that hashtag and that location, and and so it's just been like a really good strategy. And now I've booked like 5 clients who work out at that place, and so I feel like it's working in a really, really weird way, because people don't think about that. Like people think Instagram, they think about your billboard, and it's like, no, what if the billboard came into your car and was like, hey, I know how you're feeling, and you're like, what in the world?
Exactly.
So
no, I love that.
So yeah, that's like one of those. Yeah, we go back to the guerrilla marketing thing. It's like all I'm doing, and you're doing, like we post and we try to stay for a little bit, you know, stay for a little while and hang out. And like if I spent all the time that I spend on Instagram engaging, which I probably should try and do, I should do like a week of just engagement. Like I would have a much better Instagram experience, because right now I still, other than those 30 minutes like you do, I still just consume. I'm just scrolling, you know, I'm just looking around, like I don't know. Sorry, that was a really long diatribe. But other thing too, I noticed, at least for you and the businesses that you work with, is like a lot of them, you're not a photographer, or at least you're not like, you don't bid yourself as a photographer. I think you have solid photos for sure. And a lot of influencers and people who want to be good at Instagram don't necessarily have like the camera skills, you know? And so I think like they wonder how can they make cohesive content, and how can they make it like worthy of their investment, you know? Like what's your kind of mindset for businesses who maybe aren't photography related?
Yeah. So the way that I've made this happen has partially been a product of my travel. When I'm going somewhere, so for example, I spent 3.5 weeks in Seattle this summer for work. And so I went to the hashtag Seattle photographer, and I looked for photographers who shot in a similar style to the content that I already had, and reached out to them. And I just like work with photographers in all of these locations that I go to. And then I'm really careful about making sure, even when I'm posting those photos months and months later on my feed, because you'll see the same photos pop up a few times.
Yeah.
I'm making sure to constantly tag those folks and just like create community. And when someone asks like, oh, where's that photo from? Well, you look at my location tag and you look at the photographer I tagged, and you can go find them too if they're near you. So like I invest in my Instagram because I know that I'm not a photographer, so I need that content.
Totally.
But then B, I invested in a halfway decent camera. It's a mirrorless DSLR. So like, it's not as fancy as you guys use. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. But I shoot in RAW. Mm-hmm. And I pay an actual talented photographer to help edit my photos for that same consistency. So because I'm shooting in RAW, even if the photo isn't necessarily composed the way she would have composed it, she's able to crop adjust so that it still looks beautiful.
Totally. And it like aligns with your like brand values.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's black and white or something like that. That makes sense. And that's for any photographer who's taken like a corporate gig. That a lot of times you'll get handed like a style guide and they'll say, hey, like we love these colors. Or if you back in the day, a lot of photographers joke, like if we shot for Kodak, like, hey, you need to make sure your yellow is the exact color that Kodak, like the exact hex code. And, some businesses are not going to be that strict, like a concrete business or something like that. But at the same time, it's like they're going to know what they like. They're going to know what sells and, what they can do. So tell me more about this Nomad year that you you did. Was that on purpose? Was that on accident? Or is that just the way you described like that it felt? Because I definitely feel like last year you were everywhere.
Yeah, so it was kind of a mix of both. As 2016 was starting to wrap up, I had gone on this pitching spree to speak at conferences because that was a big goal for me in 2017 was like national level visibility. It was one of my goals. And as I was looking at my travel calendar for the conferences that I'd booked, I spoke at like 60 plus, 70 plus conferences last year.
Whoa.
And I realized that I was only going to be home a maximum of 1 week a month. And at the time in 2016, I was living in Chicago and I was like, am I really about to pay $1,000 a month for a glorified storage unit? No. So the week after Thanksgiving, I made the decision, like, I'm going to sell all my stuff and just travel. So between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I downsized by about 85%, got rid of so much stuff. And on December 23rd, I moved out of an apartment. And the plan was 2017 and 2018, I was going to live out of a suitcase, just travel, speak at conferences, do the thing. And on December 23rd, 2016, that started. And by the time July 2017 rolled around, I'd been doing it for 8 months. Like life was going good. I was loving it. I got to see like so many of these online friends that I had made in real life, make real connections. But then there was one night in July of 2017. I say one night, but like we all feel this every other week, where like the feast and famine of entrepreneurship hit me really hard. And if you know me, you know that I like whiskey. And I have this really weird habit of going on LinkedIn when I'm drinking. And so this night in July, I'd been drinking and I'm scrolling LinkedIn and I guess I had like a manic blackout moment because I applied to 371 jobs that night. And next day, like woke up, didn't remember doing this, assumed that I scrolled LinkedIn per usual, whatever.
Yeah.
Next day, I woke up and there was an email from Google in my inbox. And I was like, this is BS. Like, this is spam. And I like was about to delete the email when my mom and my partner were like, maybe just try replying.
Yeah.
So I replied, and this was July. The next month in August, I was in Morocco. And by the time I left Morocco, I had a job offer to work at Google. And I started in September. And so that 2-year nomad adventure became 9 months of glory, essentially. But the funny thing is, this year, 2018, I've actually traveled more miles year over year to current date than I did last year. And I've had a full-time job.
That's nuts.
But I'm not a nomad because I like technically have a permanent address right now.
Like you have a place where you get mail right now.
Right. So
That is insane. That is so funny. You should, I guess this is probably not where we should have told people. Sometimes just drink whiskey and browse LinkedIn. And that's also how you can find gigs. Like, that's amazing. That is awesome. Does Google know that that's how it worked out? Hopefully they won't listen to this podcast. We'll see.
Yes and no. Like, Google, the behemoth that is Google doesn't know.
Sure.
But like anecdotally, coworkers know.
Totally. That's amazing. So. Oh my goodness. But I mean, at the end of the day, you wouldn't have got the email if you weren't qualified or if they didn't see something they liked in you. So that makes sense. That's awesome.
And also, like, imposter syndrome 101. Apparently, it took alcohol for me to be ballsy enough to apply for a job at Google.
Yeah.
So
100%. That's something my high school football coach always joked about. Like, and this is hilarious now. We would never let coaches talk like this to players, but he was telling us the story that he was like trying to hit his 300-pound bench press. Like, that was like a big goal, and that's a big goal for a lot of like guys who lift. And he could never break it, or like he could never break 315. Like, that's the main thing, because I think it's 225s on each side or 245s on each side, and he could never do it. And then he like got up to 280, and it just didn't work out. And I guess one night him and the boys were drinking, and he's feeling kind of cocky, and he just walks over, puts the plates on, and does it. And that was kind of like a mindset shift for all of us. He's like, hey, like there's you're probably not even using like this extra 30% of your personality or your strength or your goals or whatever. And a little liquid courage, that goes a long way to try and make it happen. So that's amazing. I love that.
I'll have to let my boyfriend know. He just broke 305 on his deadlift, and he's jonesing.
There you go. That's awesome. Hey, he could just drink a little bit, and but I don't know about deadlift. That sounds terrifying to do that after drinking.
I mean, like, at least like bench press, you could drop that shit on your chest. At least with a deadlift, it's just going to drop back on the floor.
That's fair. That is also fair. That is hilarious, man. This podcast has gone off the rails. This is hilarious. So how are you balancing now, like having a full-time job for like a big corporation? And I know you joked that it's 9 to 5, but oftentimes for a lot of big tech companies, it's not necessarily 9 to 5. And how are you doing that, managing that while also managing all your full-time, your freelance?
It's kind of become an amalgamation. I like to pretend that I have a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9. But if you ask my boyfriend, I just have a 25/7.
Yeah.
So I'm at that age where I'm like, quote unquote, single, because I'm not married, right? Like, you have to check the boxes on the paper. It's either single, married, or divorced. There's no dating the love of my life box. So I'm single. I don't have children. I don't have a pet. I can kind of just do whatever I want within reason.
Yeah.
So right now my season is working 24/7. That's been my season since 2014. So something's going to have to give sooner or later. But there really isn't that thing called balance in my life right now. But I'm loving it. Like, I love what I do. I'm paying attention and listening to myself, and burnout is coming, and I'll spend a whole weekend not working, which is like #shocker. I'm just kind of doing the thing without the balance, which is so like apocalyptic, right? In the creative world, we preach don't hustle, we preach like grace, rest, but I'm kind of bad at those things.
Totally. I mean, there's like two sides. I feel like there's one side that is like, no, hustle, like go after it. Like, what are you waiting for? And then there's the side that views that as kind of like, and anything in an unhealthy way you wouldn't want to do. But that's something I've seen too, where like people, I don't know. It's a hot topic, and it's kind of like not what we were going after, but like I don't know. Like, I love what I do. So like when I'm working, it's not as difficult to keep doing that. Especially like, at least in my specific scenario and your scenarios, it's like my wife is in school full time, and like she's gone from like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I do get time to hang out with friends every once in a while, but otherwise I'm like, well, I might as well just work on this business, and like I have long-term goals that I want to try and go after, and if we can get a little leg up on those, like why not? But I guess too at the same time, like I don't feel like I am like burnt out, or I don't feel like I am dying or anything like that. And like something Gary Vaynerchuk always talks about, despite him saying hustle all the time, is he's like, don't be romantic about how you make your money. And
exactly,
like why not? And I don't know. I think,
well, like my boyfriend's an athletic trainer.
Yeah.
There are some weeks where he works 35 hours and there are some weeks where he works 90, like if there's a tournament or if, and so honestly, like that relationship has given me a lot more confidence and freedom to do my own thing, because it's given me the perspective that like, okay, there's this dude who has a full-time job and sometimes he works 90 plus hour weeks. Cool. I can too. And like, if I'm hanging out at his house and he's not going to be home from the Friday night football game until 11 p.m. and like low key, your girl doesn't want to go sit through every homecoming game, or like every home game.
Yeah.
So I did go to homecoming this past Friday, but like, I don't want to go to every home game. Like, I'm just going to work.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. It's, why not? And it's more productive than watching Netflix. And
exactly.
I think I talked to Tyler about this, circling everything back to Tyler again. But the idea of not demonizing Netflix or demonizing things that we love, but I want to do even my rest. Like I want to have intentionality with it. And so saying like, hey, this weekend, I'm not going to do any work. I'm not going to answer any emails. I'm going to put the autoresponder on and I'm going to do this. Whereas like things like Netflix or YouTube or Instagram, oftentimes as creative entrepreneurs and even folks who have 9-to-5s, like that becomes our like default. Like that's our thing that's occupying the rest of our brain from whatever we're actually doing, whether it's eating or drinking coffee or doing work. And I just don't want that. Like I want everything I do to have like focus and intentionality. And usually the value of whatever I'm doing, even if it is watching Netflix, is usually much higher. Like I get a lot more out of the show that I'm watching, or I get a lot out of the YouTube video if I'm doing it with intentionality and paying attention. Oh
yeah, I think we all like watch Netflix while we work. But so right now I'm rewatching House of Cards because the new season is coming out soon. And I realized that I've missed so much of like the intricacies of that show because I was watching it while I was working. So like I've missed out on some of the witty one-liners. I've missed out on some of the like backhanded, like sketchy stuff, all because I was watching it part-time.
Totally. As somebody who lives in DC, I love that show. And
oh my gosh, yeah.
It's essentially real life now. It used to be like, this would never happen. So that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing that show can make where I'd be surprised now. I'd be like, no, that makes perfect sense. Like it's totally fine.
This last season is going to be great. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I can't wait. Awesome. I want to kind of bring back a little bit of focus before is like, what is one thing you see small businesses and like folks in our kind of industries, the creative fields, like doing wrong on either social media or marketing that they could be doing better? Like what's one easy thing that you think that if everybody switched out how they did it, it would be better? So if there is such a magical thing.
I think we all feel this pressure to be on all the platforms. But like, gonna say something crazy. I'm a marketing strategist and I've emailed my email list twice this year. I've actually written 3 blog posts this year. I haven't posted to Facebook myself originally in 2 years. Twitter is all pre-scheduled, automated, except for like the occasional retweet, because I know that my audience lives on Instagram. So like the people that I want to speak to, they're either on Instagram or they're corporate people that don't give a crap about any of that stuff, and they're going to land on my website and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I think we feel like we have to be all of the places because everyone else is all of the places. But the funny thing is, if you have time to be creating content for all of the platforms that exist, that probably means you don't have enough client work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the people that, and I love a good Facebook group, but the people that are in Facebook groups all the time probably don't have a ton of client work.
Yeah.
So, like, don't be afraid to step back, to automate your secondary platforms, to hone in on the ones that matter, because your people will find you.
Totally. Totally. I love that. That's something we've been trying to focus on this year rather than like hiring a social media person or having, I have like a assistant / online business manager that helps me out a little bit. And I've been like, I don't want you to touch social media because that's like, not because I don't want you to touch it. It's just not that valuable, which I know sounds crazy. I'm just like, hey, I'll manage Instagram. But like for Facebook, yeah, that's something for our page. Like we've been kind of like dialing in like the if this then that like functions and like sharing, just so hey, if we share on Instagram, it's going to go to Facebook, and which like they would tell you like, no, it needs to be correct for Facebook. And I don't know, we're just not at that level where like myself and our company is like, it's not at that level where we need to stress about that versus like a Whirlpool, you know, like that's a ginormous company. And a lot of their audience, I bet, is on Facebook, but they're also trying to like market to us and be like, oh, a washer and dryer that like comes in matte black. Oh, that's an Instagram ad. Oh, that's I'm going to buy that. You know, whereas like on Facebook, they're probably not going to do that. They're going to have like Chip and Joanna Gaines talking about their washer.
Exactly.
You know, and it's, yeah, I think kind of something that I've gotten just from talking to you just now is like people feel this pressure to be everywhere all the time because they see, you know, people they look up to or competitors or whatever. And, you know, there's a guy named Sean West. I don't know if you know who he is. He's awesome. But he talks about like building one bonfire at a time. And
exactly.
He talks about it like one for your business. Like for me, like I want to own a coffee shop someday, but I need to build Mason Photography first. We need to build the Bearded Tog. And then we'll eventually someday, you know, we'll build the next bonfire. But even social media wise, it's like, hey, what would, for those folks in Facebook groups or those folks who are trying to create content for all of the other platforms, and it's like, what would it look like if you just went 100% in on Instagram, you know, or even 90%, and then you just give the other 10, you know, like a little bit. You just give the other networks the scraps from Instagram, like you don't repurpose. And I think people would be astounded at the change, you know, like for me, it's mostly just laziness. Like when I'm properly scheduling my Instagram and doing a good job and making sure it looks good, like I gain followers. And then when I am lazy and I don't schedule because entrepreneur life, I'm like, oh, that's why I haven't grown it all this week. Like it does work. Like everything you said and everything the people, we know the things to do. We have the information. What we're lacking is action.
And I think like, so you said something that I think was really important, that these people that we look up to are everywhere. But ever since, you know how on Facebook now, when you go to a business page, you can click and see what ads they're running.
Oh, I didn't even know that. I'm so off Facebook.
Oh, yeah. Like you can go to the Facebook page and then on the left-hand side where you can choose between posts, reviews, photos, there's now a button that says info and ads. And you can see all of the ads that a Facebook page is running. I, every once in a while, go creep just because I'm curious. And you would be surprised how many of these big people that we follow literally are posting to Instagram just to turn around, or posting to Facebook just to turn around and turn it into an ad. They're posting to their blog just to turn around and boost that blog post.
Right.
So these people that we think are everywhere, no, they're posting that content so that they can turn around and turn it into ads.
Right.
So they're not actually everywhere. They're just building their ad cache, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's, yeah, I say this all the time on this podcast. It's like every person and every business is an iceberg. Like we only see the top 10%. And sometimes that 10% just looks really shiny and awesome. And they have new shoes and they're a multimillionaire now. And, but we don't know what's going on underneath, both the good and the bad. Like we just don't know. And sometimes things like the little Facebook tool we can dive into, but, awesome. So Danny, tell us where, sorry. We're gonna leave it in just because it's real life. Like I said, it's our first podcast back after a while, and yeah, I feel like if I don't pause this conversation, we'll talk for 3 hours. So like, what are your plans for the upcoming year? Like, are you doing Nomad, or are you just kind of enjoying life right now? Do you feel like steady at all, or like what's your next goal or next thing?
So right now, and I don't know when this is going to air, but it's somewhere in Q4 right now.
Yeah.
And in Q4 18, I'm working on moving back to Chicago in Q1 19. The weird thing about Google is when you want to move internally, it's just like external. You have to go to a LinkedIn-esque site, apply for a job, and interview for it. So I'm in the process right now of interviewing for Q1 jobs. So I guess like the bigger answer there is I'm staying at Google.
Nice.
But then I'm also like there's 2019 speaking gigs on the pipe, and I still have some Q4 speaking engagements. So I think I'm just gonna like keep trucking on. So I guess yes, I'm gonna be a nomad because I doubt I'll fly less next year than I did this year. So
I love that. What one thing I want to ask you, just because it's something that you do a lot. There are folks who are really good and at what they do, just like you, but like you. And how do folks get into speaking? You said that was one of your intentional things. Like, I feel my impression of speaking is people just magically find you and then they email you and say, "Hey, Danny, come speak at this thing."
That's cute.
But but you're so much more intentional than that. And so I'm curious as like how you went about that, or like, did you hire a PR person, or what does that look like?
So late 2016, I made a spreadsheet of all the conferences in the creative industry that I would ever want to speak at, even if I didn't think I was qualified.
Yeah.
And I sorted that list by smallest number of attendees to largest, and then layered on a filter for level in business. And I just started pitching the smallest conferences with business levels that I felt prepared and equipped enough to educate. And then I built from there.
And then do you just email them, or you say, "Hey"?
So a lot of them have like open calls for submissions. So if anyone has been alive on Instagram in the past month or so, you know that Alt Summit had an open call for pitches and people could vote.
Yeah.
So some of them have open calls and you just got to package your stuff beautifully. And others, if they don't, or if it looks like they choose their speakers versus doing a pitch, I would email the founder of the conference and ask to get coffee and
That's
understand the conference demographic. And it wasn't even so much I was doing that to land a gig. It was I wanted to understand if the conference would be a good fit first. And probably about 50 to 60% of the time, those coffee chats turned into invitations to speak.
I love that. That's such a good way of going about it. And I feel like speaking is one of those things that where a lot of us just don't know about, or that, like I said, I come from the world where like you're known for what you create, and then somebody like picks you up and says, "Hey, come do this," or you have PR. So I love that. Danny, where can we go to interact with you? Obviously, drop your Instagram handle, and I've always loved your website. So like, what are those handles for that? And what can we talk to you about in the future?
Yeah, Instagram is at Dannie Lynn Fountain. Website is DannieFountain.com, keeping it real simple. And just come hang out. You'll see me talking about whiskey and my boyfriend, muscles, weights, whatever he does, and travel and Google, whatever.
I love it. Thank you so much, Danny, for coming on, and can't wait to have you back on. We'll have to do another one with me, you, and Tyler. That's what I feel like I need
that'd be fun.
Okay, awesome. We'll do that. Thank you so much, Danny.
Thanks.
Always fun to chat with a new friend, somebody who I've been following for a long time, and then finally we get them on the podcast. It was awesome talking to Danny. If you haven't already, go check her out on Instagram. She's just so fun. She is, I don't know the way to describe this in like proper politically correct terms, but like, she's your girl. She can be your homie. She's your buddy. And lastly, just like we talked about before in the beginning of the episode, you definitely need to check out the long-term mentorship. We are officially open for registration. It's only going to be open for about the next few weeks, or until we fill all the spots. There's only 10 slots. And so definitely make sure that you sign up if you want to gain traction and clarity in your business in 2019. Or if you have more questions, definitely make sure that you listen to our most recent episode, all the FAQs about long-term mentorship. We would love to see you there, and we would love to change your business in 2019. Thank you guys so much for listening. Keep being awesome.